Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to today's webinar of Applying Resilience Through Adversity. I'm Chris Sterling. I sit on the committee for the Financial Services Group. I have the immense pleasure today of having Stuart Robinson MBE with us. I'm not going to ruin his introduction or take away anything from that, but however, looking at the webinar itself, breaking it down, we're going to be looking at the effects of poor mental health, building and applying resilience to everyday mindset and goal setting. And then the last phase will be a Q&A sample will last 10-15 minutes. As we make our way through the webinar, any questions, please just drop them into the box and we shall address those at the end. So that's all the formal bit done and dusted. We want to get to the good stuff now. So without further ado, please let me introduce Stuart Robinson MBE.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, like Chris said, my name is Stuart Robinson. I'm just going to take you through a little bit of a story about my career, obviously within the Air Force, and a little bit of an incident, and then obviously where I've gone on from there and where I am today. If you could just share the presentation, please. And here we go. So, first of all, there's a slide that's going to come up next, which has got a bit of a few words on it. If you just have a read of those and bear them in mind throughout the presentation. Basically, these have become a little bit more apparent a little bit later on throughout the whole presentation. So, like I said, my name's Stuart Robinson. I'm an RAF Regiment veteran. I joined the service in 1999. I was 17 and a half, literally just at the age where I was eligible to join the Air Force, join the military. And for me, I kind of always had the idea or the ambition, should we say, to kind of join the military and kind of see where that took me for my career. Now, obviously coming from up north, there was not much employment opportunities going around, and for me, it made kind of sense to join the Air Force. And I kind of, when I was at college, looked around all the different services, the different public services that are available, not just the three armed services, but also as well they've got the emergency services as well. And for me, it just kind of ticked all the boxes to want to join the Air Force and to see where that could take me. If you could just move to the next slide, please. So yeah, I joined in 1999. I went straight to RAF Halton, where I did a couple of days, obviously literally like a rabbit in the headlights, and then straight to RAF Honington, where as part of the regiment side of things, that's where you undergo your basic training. Now, this again was a massive eye-opener. 17 and a half, kind of still lived at home with my parents and my sisters. So for me to go out into the big wide world and to learn how to look after yourselves and how to basically cook, clean, administer yourself, and basically to start my career was the big massive eye opener. And as much as it was, like I said, an eye opener, it was for me the start of what I wanted to do in my career and where I wanted to go forward. So it was quite an easy option to make career-wise, but for me it was like a bit of a tough time to take, because you're trying to learn to live on your own and how to deal with different things. But on top of that, you learn so many new skills while joining the military, a lot, obviously, being part of a team, and also learning to administer and look after yourself individually, and so many different things to try and to work on. But for me, it was just a great opportunity to now take my life and my career in the way that I wanted. So the whole of the RAF Regiment basic training was around about 6 months long. I graduated one day before my 18th birthday, and luckily we managed to graduate. We did all the stuff with the family and celebrating the fact that, you know, a fully fledged member of the Air Force. Went home for a couple of weeks leave, and for me, I was then told that my first job or posting, should we say, within the Air Force was going to be at RAF Waddington. Now, for me, this is a bit of a shock to the system again, because we'd just gone through all the kind of rough and ready kind of stuff within the regiment at Honington, where you learn how to obviously live in the field. You live in a hole for a couple of weeks at a time. You dig in trenches and you're doing the different weapon systems. And then for me to then go to RAF Waddington, which was an air defence unit, was completely different. These guys were all like used to living in tents and setting up these airborne missile systems to take down the anti-aircraft, etc., and stuff like that. So a complete shock to the system. But again, this is my career. I chose it, and it's where I wanted to go with it. So I kind of got stuck in and decided where it was going to take me. If you just skip forward again, next slide, please. It wasn't long, couple of years that I was there in Lincoln, that we got obviously seen on stuff on the news and stuff like that, obviously with the current terrorist events and the ongoings, that we were due to deploy to Basra in southern Iraq. Now, obviously, I'd gone from going to exercise to like Senebridge in South Wales and going away to little deployments to places like Kuwait or to the Falkland Islands and places like that. To now you're getting literally thrown in the deep end and going to Iraq, which is where it was all kicking off and all happening. So it was a massive, again, shock to the system. You get out the aircraft door, you get hit by the massive heat wave, and you're ready then to kind of get stuck in and to do the job, the real job that I kind of felt like I was more tailored towards, rather than just doing the kind of air defense kind of thing. So the bread and butter of the regiment's job at the time was the force protection. So your role is to protect any equipment, any infrastructure, any personnel that are part of the Air Force or wherever they're based. So you're set up obviously an area of operations in and around the operating base of wherever the Air Force are, and it's your job to head out and do patrols, to do quick reaction force, to do the medical emergency response team and stuff like that. And obviously you can see in some of these pictures on the slide that the air traffic control tower at Basra was quite a nice, should we say, vantage point for us to continue to have a good look out of the area of what was going on, stuff like that. But as well, it also provided a massive aiming marker for any of the insurgents and that to fire rockets or to take a pot shot at the training camp, the base. So it was a tough time to take. But before I knew it, the 4 or 5 months, however long it was, had passed, and I was on my way back home. And by the time I'd done like 3 years, I think, in RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, and I was due a move. So I kind of moved then to a place in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, where obviously the role there was, again, pretty much the same, just a different environment. Your role was to protect the Air Force equipment, infrastructure, personnel, etc. But obviously in and around Belfast, and then you had to obviously take part in the marching season and stuff like that. And I think it wasn't long before I'd got there. I'd got the ferry over and then driven over to Belfast, that I was told that the squadron was due to deploy back to Iraq. So I'd literally come back from Iraq, settled get my feet in the door in Belfast, and then turn around and back on another plane back to Basra. So before we knew it, I was back out there doing the same role again. But I kind of enjoyed this time because it was a new unit. It was an opportunity to kind of bed myself in and get to know everybody, and as well as that, you're doing the role which you were trained for within the RAF Regiment. So next slide, please. Obviously, a few. I think towards the end of that tour, we came back and we had a bit of a training exercise up in the northeast, maybe at Otterburn. While we were there, we were given notification that the British forces were due to deploy into Afghanistan. And obviously, from a cast of thousands and thousands and thousands, I was given my name to pull out of a hat that within the space of being in Belfast over a couple of months, that I'd gone back to Basra. I'd done the marching season over in Belfast, and then within a few more months, I was then deploying back out to Afghanistan the same year. So it was a massively busy time, not just for myself, but I think for anybody within the unit, with anybody within the not just the Air Force, but the British forces in general. And as much as, you're away for a long period of time, and anybody with young families or friends, wives, girlfriends at home, you know what I mean, that they're there, you're going to be deployed a lot, and it is a massively busy time. But for me, I kind of enjoyed this because I lost a little bit of my enjoyment within the military every time that I came back from places like this, because you're kind of like just filling time, you're filling gaps where you're going on an exercise and you're playing with simulated casualties, you're playing with like simulated events that they're trying to make as realistic as possible. But the only time that it feels real, or it is real, is when you are actually deployed and you're actually carrying out the job that you're employed to do. So I kind of always look forward to the opportunity to go away again. And as much as I said that it was a busy time and you're away quite a lot, it was just, for me, it was the chance to always look at when we were going to be away next, to start planning ahead and when we could be away, and carrying out the job for real. So I think over the coming years, months, whatever, that I moved around a couple more units. I went to up to RAF Regiment up in North Yorkshire, where again we carried out more deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. And again, it was just more and more time away. And I think leading up to then, to about 2008, I was then fortunate enough to be selected for a promotion. And then as I got promoted, I came back from there, and we were straight away deploying straight back to Iraq. We came back from Iraq, and then we went back to Kandahar in Afghanistan. And then again, I think in 2012, you go to the next slide, please. We were, I remember being at home watching the London 2012 Paralympics on the TV, and the end of the program was interrupted by a news bulletin stating that Camp Bastion, which is the largest UK operating base in southern Afghanistan, had come under attack from the Taliban. And there were a number of, obviously, casualties, a number of fatalities, and in a kind of way, I knew what was going to happen, because we were due to deploy there in a couple of months anyway. And no longer than 5 minutes after the news bulletin finished, my phone started ringing, and it was obviously work saying, look, the guys that have been injured, we need to replace them, and because we're due to go out there in the next couple of months, we need some people to go early. Obviously, I was like, all my paperwork was in order and ready to go. I'd done all my rifle testing, I'd done all my medical immunizations, so all up to date. So I was ready to go. Obviously, I looked at my wife, and straight away she kind of knew what the questions that I was being asked were, and I was ready to go. The very next day, I was on a bus to RAF Brize Norton, and I on a plane over to Afghanistan. And again, I remember the door opening of the aircraft, and being hit not only by the heat wave of how hot it was in Afghanistan, but as well as that, you could still smell the burning embers of obviously the destruction that had happened on camp, but you could also sense the amount of tension that was being built on camp because of what had happened. So it was a pretty tough time. I think that we got on the ground. We had about a week's period where we had to get up to scratch before we were allowed to start to be embedded with the rest of the squadron that was there. And for our role, it was to get out there and again do the same as before. You were carrying out the patrols, you were carrying out the quick reaction force, you were also carrying out a TESOL patrol. Now, a TESOL patrol in the RAF Regiment is more of a patrol where you head out in the vehicles, and you basically provide a blanket of security to allow any aircraft, fixed wing or rotary, to take off or land under the blanket of security that you're going to provide. So you can imagine at the time when, in obviously 2012, it was quite a busy period for the British forces in southern Afghanistan. So the amount of aircraft leaving and arriving at Camp Bastion was non-stop. So the amount of patrols we had to do were pretty relentless. And the way that my unit was carrying out the TESOL patrols were you had to do a closer patrol so that you could allow many of the aircraft landing and arriving to take off safely. But on the second day of the patrol, you had to push a little bit further deep into the area of operations and set up so that the large aircraft, which you're thinking now the passenger carrying or the main equipment or infrastructure carrying aircraft, could be allowed to land or depart safely. Now we have to push deeper because these larger kind of aircraft, they're going to start their approach or their departure a lot further out than what most of the other aircraft kind of do. So you have to push a little bit further into the kind of more dangerous areas and allow them the security to take off safely. One of the other jobs that I haven't quite gone into yet, next slide please, is the medical emergency response team. Now, obviously, anywhere that the British military are deployed, obviously there is a duty of care from the HM government and from the military to look after any serviceman or woman that gets injured within that theatre of operations. Now, a bit like the UK. Obviously, we've got the ambulances, etc., and stuff like that can get to you and give you the best possible care. Now, that's not quite the same when you're in these kind of areas. We have this thing called the Medical Emergency Response Team, which is basically, you can see the picture on the left, the Chinook helicopter, which is decked out like the one on the right, and basically is a mobile flying ambulance. Probably one of the best medical cares that you can think of. Now, it looks pretty cramped and pretty tight on the picture on the right, but the amount of kit and equipment you can get in there is unbelievable. Now, you obviously got the doctors, the nurse, you've got a paramedic, you've got the actual people who are in charge of the actual aircraft itself. So you've got obviously the pilot, the navigator, and the loadmaster or the crewman. And as well as that, because you're now part of, or you're on board an Air Force piece of equipment, obviously the bread and butter of the regiment is to look after that. So we have a team that's based on there, so 4 guys who you have to look after everybody on board and the actual airframe itself. So there's a lot of people on board, and you can imagine that when you now start getting the number of casualties on the back, how busy that's going to be and how cramped it's going to start to become. Now, this obviously it involves, like I said, picking up the casualties, and sometimes you're not landing into like a kind of safe zone or safe area where it's just nice and easy, you can get the casualty at the back. Sometimes the contacts, or should we say the firefights, are still ongoing, and you still have to provide the best possible security or care for getting everybody on board as safe as you can and protecting everyone that is on board. So it's a tough time, and for me, not only are you looking after everybody on board, but you also, once the aircraft is then airborne in the sky, you can then kind of get your elbows in and start helping out with the casualties or whatever they need doing. Now, you can imagine obviously the type of injuries that we're picking up in these kind of situations that we're going to, that they're not the normal kind of ambulance pickups that you get in the UK. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but it definitely made it feel like you were making a difference when you're picking up these casualties, and you're getting back to the best possible medical care that you can think of, obviously, while you're in this kind of these theatre of operations. And I kind of enjoyed it. And the only thing for me was that not only was you had a million things to look after the aircraft, look after everyone on board, help out with the casualties, but for me, the regiment at the time was going through a bit of a transition where there's a lot of new young guys coming through. And for me, this is my 4th time in Afghanistan. And obviously I've done this job a couple of times, so I kind of knew what to expect. But just seeing the young guys on the first shout out or the first call out that you get, that their eyes kind of like open massively to what they're now dealing with. And like I said before, it's all well and good dealing with simulated casualties back in the UK when you're in exercise or what else, but as soon as you get out there and you're now dealing with this kind of real life emergencies, that the kind of training, everything kicks in. So it was definitely one of the more fulfilling roles, despite obviously some of the situations and things that we kind of find ourselves in. Next slide, please. And obviously in February 2013, we were out on a 3-vehicle test roll patrol, and we'd done the first day, so we'd done the close patrol, and then the second day, it was quite early, about 7 a.m. We'd been relieved by our counterparts, and they managed to head in back to their turnaround days, turn the kit around and get fresh ammunition and fresh water, fresh rations, etc. Now it was our turn to move into the test roll deep, so we had to push a little bit further into the area of operations of where we were going to be carrying out the test roll patrol. Just before we set off, the headquarters got on the radio to me, and as they got on the radio to me, they said, look, can you head out to this local village, have a chat with the head man, and see what his feelings are towards the British forces on the whole atmosphere and the environment of what's going on at the moment. I was like, okay, yeah, no worries. We didn't have a task in until later that evening, so we had a bit of a day to go out and do some of the tasks within the area. And the patrol was consisting of 3 vehicles. You can just see it on the left-hand picture on the presentation. There's 2 vehicles there, the 2 largely armoured vehicles, which their main role was the front and the rear of the patrol. Obviously, the front one was to detect an early warning system of any IEDs that were in the ground. My vehicle, which was the centre picture of on the presentation, was the Jackal, which had all the weaponry and all the ammunition, etc., and stuff like that. We were pretty lightly armoured, but obviously we had to be for obvious reasons to be able to maneuver the weapon systems and to bring them into force if we needed to. And then obviously another armoured one at the back to help bring up the rear and to carry any extra kit and equipment that needed. Just before we set off on the patrol, I remember tapping in the destination on the GPS that was on the dashboard. I said to the driver, okay, you know where we're going. And the thing is about southern Afghanistan, and especially near Bastion, there is literally no tracks, no roads, no nothing. You can pretty much pick and choose wherever you want to go. Obviously, you know the dangerous areas and kind of where it's going to take you and where not to go, really. So I gave him the sat-nav coordinates and off we went. I remember being less than 5 minutes into the patrol, and it was quite early in the morning, so obviously the sun was still breaking, and I remember seeing the brake lights of the vehicle in front with through the dust and through the sand that had been kicked up, and then I heard a beeping noise coming from the back of the vehicle, and it was either, I thought to myself, it's either going to be the electronic countermeasures, which obviously was our own vehicle's way of detecting the improvised explosive device alarming, or it was something wrong with the radio battery, etc. So I rested my head against the headrest, just closed my eyes, just hoped for like 2 seconds that the patrol could go smoothly and we could have a nice quiet patrol and get on with things. And I remember once I kind of opened my eyes, the beeping noise was still there. However, the environment had changed. The brake lights of the vehicle in front through the sand and through the dust and everything had changed. That had now disappeared, and my surroundings and my environment was now, I was in a completely clean, white room, big, massive, bright, shining lights in my eyes, and something had changed completely. Something had gone wrong. I wasn't quite sure of what had happened, but for me, I knew that something had gone wrong. It was just not trying to figure out what happened, and unfortunately, we'd driven over an improvised explosive device which had gone off underneath my seat and ejected me clear of the vehicle. Now, I think if we just press the next slide, I think it'll show the video of me being loaded onto a helicopter. Yeah, so I was ejected clear of the vehicle, and these are pretty much the extent of the injuries that I sustained. Now, because I was in the passenger seat and I had a machine gun on the dashboard to try and to be able to employ within the vehicle situation, that I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Now, obviously, a big thing within the military is to obviously wear seatbelts and to comply with the rules of that. But there becomes a commander's discretion where you can kind of take control of the situation that basically requires that for me, I said to the guys in the vehicle, if you don't want to wear seatbelts, that's fine, because we have the weapon systems to employ and things like that. So I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, but that did mean that upon the blast happening, I was ejected clear of the vehicle. Now, straight away, I suffered a loss of my left leg. I also had my arm on the door, and as the device initiated, it blew the door off my arm, tried following it. Now, this had become a little bit more apparent again in a few more slides' time. And I think because I'd been ejected clear of the vehicle and landed face down like 30 feet away, a number of the injuries that I sustained must have been like when I hit the floor, tried to break my own fall. As you can see, obviously fractured majority of my upper body, and obviously the internal injuries that I sustained as well. Now, luckily for me, I think that, as you probably saw in the previous picture, the state of the vehicle, that if I had been with the seatbelt on, that I probably wouldn't be here today. So despite the list of injuries that I have sustained, I probably think that it could have been a lot worse than what it was. You can see obviously the picture on the right, the extent of how high the left amputation had to be to enable me to be able to make my recovery as best possible. And obviously there's plenty of metal work in there as well. If you go to the next slide, please. A little bit more now on the leadership and things. Now, I know this might seem a little bit away from the story, but you can see this picture here that apart from Holly being in the middle of us, the guy on the right of the picture is a guy called Price. Now, he was a young guy. He only joined my unit out in Afghanistan probably about halfway through the deployment. Now, I'd not really worked with this guy before, and on the day, obviously, of the incident, I was the patrol commander, and I was told that this guy was going to be my patrol second in command. Now, I'd not worked with him before. I didn't quite know how he worked, and I just had to basically trust that the training he'd done and the rank that he'd attained meant that he was good enough to carry it on. And I couldn't really have asked for a better guy to be my 2IC. Now, I said before that the patrol was split into the 3 vehicles. Obviously, I was in the middle of one, which obviously got hit. Now, the one behind was being commanded by this guy, Pricey. And when the device went off, and obviously most people's reaction is to run around like headless chickens and not quite know what's going on or what's happening. But this guy kind of took control of the whole situation. He stayed within his vehicle. Luckily, he had quite a good viewpoint of it all, what was going on and stuff like that. And he straight away got onto the younger guys within the patrol and got them coordinated a clear safe lane up to myself to obviously start carrying out the initial first aid for me. As well as that, he then got another set of guys out to clear a safe landing zone for the helicopter, like you saw in the previous slide, to be able to enable them to land, to get me on board and get me back to Camp Bastion and eventually back to the UK. And then, as well as that, obviously he's got to deal with any other threats that could be in the area, because obviously sometimes you were hit with not just an IED but with small arms attack as well. So he had to be on the lookout for that. And again, for this guy's his calmness and the way that he managed to coordinate everything was, I think, a testament to the way that he's training and the kind of person that he is. And like I said, he was still a pretty young guy within the regiment and the role that he'd taken on board. But to have that kind of level of maturity was definitely, without being so much of a cliche, but definitely a lifesaver for myself. He was obviously gone on to win a couple of awards for the bravery that he did for that day. I know that it means that he was sat behind a window and stuff like that, but I think that the way that he coordinated stuff with calmness and with his authority kind of makes that my transition and my recovery meant that a little bit more smoother. So next slide, please. Straight away, obviously it was a pretty tough time for me to come to terms with what had happened. I remember when I was in intensive care in Birmingham that obviously I'd been in a coma for 6 weeks now. I remember the blast had initiated. I then got sent back to Camp Bastion and sent back to the UK to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is the primary care unit for any injured servicemen and women. Now, for me, there's no recollection of the incident happening. It's just I was in Afghanistan at some point on a patrol, and then the next thing I remember, like I said, is waking up in intensive care with the big bright white lights shining on me and stuff like that. And 6 weeks had passed. I'd been in intensive care the whole time. The family was given obviously the news that I might not make it and stuff like that. But for me, I was just having a bit of a snooze for 6 weeks. When I did eventually wake up and my whole body was in traction, I couldn't move. The heavy machine gun, which is on the dashboard, had came out of the mount to hold in place when the device initiated, hit me in the face, so it fractured all my jaw and everything. So my jaw was also wired shut. So one of the things that I remember, on top of not being able to communicate with anybody because I couldn't gesticulate with my hands or point stuff like that, I couldn't verbally communicate because my mouth was wired shut to allow the jaw to fracture to heal correctly. But for me, I always remember clinging on to the fact that because of the role and the job that we'd done within the regiment on the back of the helicopter with the severely injured casualties and sometimes even the fatalities, that the fact that I could open my eyes meant that I was still alive and I could still get on with my life. So for me, it was another opportunity for me to just to grab hold of things and to want to continue getting on with life as best I can. Now, I know a lot of people could turn around and let what had happened to them affect them massively, and obviously I've gone through rehab with a lot of guys who were awake through their whole incident and stuff like that. But for me, it just meant that because I could open my eyes, meant I was still alive and I wanted to get on with my life as best I could. It wasn't long, I think a few more weeks or whatever it was, that I was Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and I had obviously a bit more surgery on my shoulders and my hands and my face and my wherever else. And until you're in a kind of more stable position that you can be allowed to be transferred, we were then made the whole process was set in stone to move down to Headley Court. And obviously the military rehab centre down there it's not open anymore, but at the time it was where any injured servicemen and women went to basically kickstart their recovery and rehab. And for me, I remember going from Birmingham Hospital, where you're in like a 8-man room-ish, should we say, with other injured servicemen. You can have a chat with them and stuff like that. And I remember getting out of the transport at Headley Court, being wheeled in my wheelchair into this single-man room. And that was it. As soon as I got in there, they just kind of left me to it and said, "We'll come back to me in a bit." But for me, I was like, because my arm was still in a bad state, I couldn't even push myself in a wheelchair. I had no legs at the time. And for me, it was just like, where do I go from here? I can't even brush my own teeth. What am I going to do now to be able to try and get my life back on track? This is ridiculous how I'm going to even be able to do this. I remember I was on the ground floor and I heard a bit of laughing and such stuff like coming out the window, and I managed to peer out the window. I could see other guys and girls that were injured amputees doing wheelchairs and stuff like that. And I remember this one guy who was a triple amputee, so obviously he's wearing prosthetics on both of his legs and one of his arms, that he'd fallen over outside. And instead of the normal generic thing to do would be to run over and help them pick them up, would be this guy or everyone else that was with him was laughing at him and waiting for him to pick himself up. And he literally picked himself back up with one arm, stood back up, walked into the building over the road from the accommodation and straight into his rehab or whatever he was doing that day. And just that single moment kind of made that click, that light bulb moment in my head to well, if these guys are doing it, then why can't I? And it was, again, a massive eye opener to be at Headley Court, seeing the different level of injuries. And I don't know if that's just because the area which I'd come from, obviously within the regiment in the Air Force, or the fact of, was I just like a normal person to see this level of injuries within people that is completely different. So and for me, I had this preconception that I didn't know how you could go to Headley Court and do like a 3-week or 3, 4, 5 hour long stint there, and how are you going to be able to fill out 3 weeks worth of rehab? There's only so much walking that you can learn to do, and it's probably quite naive of me, but there's so much more that we were put through. And not only were you learning to walk, again, you get the mental health team, because of obviously that side of things as well. You have the social workers to help you get your life back on track. You've got the gym you've got to go to, stuff like that. You've got the pain team, you've got separate doctors, nurses, stuff like that. There's so much going on that before you know it, the 3-4 weeks time that you're there, it goes pretty quickly. And I think for me, it was pretty tough to learn to walk, but for me, I just kind of wanted to get my life back on track. And I think if you press the video, you see a couple of clips now of me obviously learning to walk and some of the gym stuff that we're kind of getting on with. Oh, maybe they're not working. Okay. So yeah, the one on the left, maybe is it going to work? No, I guess not. So basically, I was up and about on my prosthetic legs within about 6 weeks. And the way that my amputations had gone was that on my left side was above knee, and the right side was below knee. Now, the main thing within all this is the knee joint. Now, this is for me, it was massive, because I still had a leg to walk on the right hand side with on the knee. However, on the left hand side, it was pretty tough, because you had to rely on this piece of mechanical engineering to not only take your weight, but to allow it to function correctly, to allow you walk and give you basically a metal electronic prosthetic knee. So it was a tough technique to try to master, but I kind of enjoyed the challenge and how it was going to enable me now to get on with life. And I found that going to the gym was for me a great distraction, not only from everything else that was going on down the bottom, learning to walk and what had happened with my whole situation, but it was a great way to get your fitness and your health back on track. So you go to the next slide, please. And yeah, like I said, because I just watched the 2012 Paralympics before deploying to Afghanistan, and I think most of the British Armed Forces are generally kind of fit, young, healthy human beings. So they do carry a high standard of fitness now. a lot of the legacy leading on from London 2012 was to try and get more people into disability sport and to where it can take you. So fortunate for me being at Headley Court, there's a lot of different opportunities to do different sports, go to the gym, to do different activities and stuff like that, and different ways of looking at it. And it was a massive eye opener for me, but one I kind of really enjoyed. And again, I think I tried wheelchair basketball, and one of the things that I kind of wanted to do was, because I played rugby before my injury, that I wanted to try and get back into some kind of team sport of how we can do it. And I thought, let's give basketball a go. I remember somebody wheeling towards me pretty fast. I remember pulling out of the wheelchair and like literally smashing into them and knocking them on the floor. And straight away, the referee turned around to look, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that in basketball. You can get in the way, you can like stop, you can make them go somewhere else, but you can't smash into them. That's not how we play wheelchair basketball. And I remember his last few words were, look, if you want to do that, you need to go away and play wheelchair rugby. Now, for me, I'd never heard of wheelchair rugby. But I did think that this was going to be a great opportunity to, again, find a sport that I wanted to do. And wheelchair rugby, because I played rugby before, kind of made sense to make that transition across. There is a clip now of how we tackle in wheelchair rugby. I'm not sure if it's going to play. Hopefully it will. Keep an eye on the guy on the right hand side. He's number, I can't remember what number he is, but he's going to get the ball back. When he gets the ball back, we're going to show you how we tackle in wheelchair rugby. So that was a perfectly legal tackle in wheelchair rugby. Now, again, still to this point, I've never seen the sport, and I kind of made a decision that when I came out of the gym one day, that at Headley Court, I saw a poster that was advertising the first ever Invictus games at your next slide, please. Sorry, at London in 2014. Now, I thought this would be a great opportunity to start playing sport and to see where it's going to take us. And obviously seeing Prince Harry and all these other people in wheelchairs and the way that they're looking so mean when they're playing sport, I thought this could be a great way to now start my sporting career and where it's going to go. I kind of already knew that my military career was going to come to an end, so I had to now look at different opportunities or different ways to now play or try out a different career. I remember seeing this poster for the advertising of the first Invictus games. Sent an email off saying, look, I'd love to get involved in wheelchair rugby. I received a reply and it said, okay, great, make your way to Leicester for a training weekend with the rugby squad. Arrived at Leicester, still expecting to see them playing with a normal rugby ball, passing the ball backwards, etc., and stuff like that. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I got there and they were playing with a round volleyball. They were bouncing it. They were passing it over their heads. They were passing it forwards, backwards, sideways, any which way you want. And also, as well as that, they were smashing into each other, which is exactly what I wanted to do. I don't know why. Obviously, it was coming from the military side of things, but it just made more sense. But one little piece of information which the email forgot to let me know was that not only, this wasn't just any other training weekend. This was going to be the finals squad selection weekend for the first ever game. So not only did I have this massive mountain to climb to learn how to play this ball, but I had to learn how to play it and impress the coaches well enough to get selected for the first ever squad. And again, a massive eye opener. It was so tiring, and I had to go end to end sport, and you just, when you're not quite used to it, and it's just, again, something to get your head around. And fortunately enough, I got the email a few weeks later saying that I'd been selected for the squad. Now, for me at the time, I wasn't overly concerned that about when I'm making the squad, about where this is going to lead. All I was really concerned about was, look, I want to go and play sport and to just show friends and family that I'm still a father, a husband, sort of friend to be looked at, and I can still do normal kind of things. And for me, I kind of wanted to get out there and just play sport and enjoy it. So I remember when the actual Invictus games kicked off, and I had this preconception idea that it was going to be some kind of like sports day where you pitch up and maybe a few people come and watch you and stuff like that. But the actual venue that we got to play the wheelchair rugby in was going to be at the Copper Box Arena, which was one of the London 2012 venues, and I think it holds around 8,000 to 10,000. And the rugby at the first ever games was being held over one day. I remember the first couple of games, we started quite early in the day. Wasn't that many people there watching. But the longer the day went on, the more and more people started coming in to watch, and that kind of fed onto our enthusiasm within the game, that we kind of thought that this could be a good day to go out there and try and win it all. And for me, this competitive spirit kicked in, and instead of me now just wanting to go out there and perform in front of friends and family, I now wanted to go out there and to win and to come away with the winner's medal. And we got into the final against the USA, and it was again an end-to-end match. I remember that we went goal for goal, and I think the last few seconds where we managed to score, I put us one goal up, and all we had to do was defend, and this was like the longest 8, 9, 10 seconds in the inner history, waiting for the referee's whistle to blow. And I remember when it finally went, I had this idea that I was going to push on the whole court. I was going to go absolutely mental that we'd won and celebrate so much. And I think when the whistle did go, I had no energy left. And I don't know if it's just the fact that we played all those games throughout one day, or the fact of the 12 months earlier, I'd been in the hospital in Birmingham, wondering how I'm going to get my life back on track and how am I going to now get things moving forward. And this was just a great thing for me to now push me forward and to get me going. And I kind of used sport from then on as my recovery tool. And I went on to compete at another 2 Invictus games in Orlando and in Toronto. And coming back from one of those games, I remember chatting to one of the coaches, and he was saying that, look, obviously there's the Paralympic version of the sport, which is next slide, please, is slightly different to this version of the Invictus Games. So if you have an injury of any sort with the Invictus Games, you basically qualify or classify to play the sport. Now, for the Paralympic version, you need a certain level of disability. Now, the Paralympic version of the game was designed for people with spinal cord injuries, so predominantly you have a lot of quadriplegics, a lot of paraplegics, but they've kind of opened up the classification entry-wise to different disabilities. And again, because I had an impairment in 3 of my limbs, so obviously I'd lost both my legs, and my arm was on the door when I was injured, so this now classified me to play the sport. I only just got in. I was literally at the top end of the classification. Now, the 4 players that are on court, you have to add up to no more than 8 classification points. Now, you're assessed on obviously your level of disability. Obviously, the more severely disabled you are, the less of a score you get. Now, for me, I was at 3.5, and the highest you can be is a 3.5. And you can imagine, though, that for the 4 players on court trying to add up to 8 points, that for me myself taking up nearly half of those is pretty tough to then fit everybody else around you. So I kind of, again, I wanted to get involved in this. This was a great opportunity for me, and I was fortunate enough to be selected to go to the Rio Paralympic Games, not to take part, but as part of the inspiration program. Now, it does exactly what it says on the tin. You're taken to a Paralympic Games to give you inspiration to push on to the next set of games. And I remember sat in the arena in Rio and watching the rugby guys come out on court and thinking, I want to be there. I want to be coming on court. I don't want to be sat in the crowd watching with all the whatever else, the rest of the crowd, and enjoying it. But I want to be down there taking part and having that nervousness and that you want to go out and compete and play your best. So I made that my goal. I remember going back to a Headley court, one of my final sessions, and the medical team turned around to me and said, look, what's your plans when you leave service? And for me, it was a clear choice, but their options were, look, you can go out and gain some employment and try a little bit of wheelchair rugby on the side, or you can play wheelchair rugby full time and do a little bit of employment on the side. And for me, it made an easy decision, because I've done obviously by then 16 years within the military, and I think eventually it kind of takes its toll. You're going away all the time, but for me, this was a great opportunity now to gain a new career and to play sport, which is what obviously I enjoyed the most. So I came back from the Rio Paralympics, and I made the decision that I was going to join, and I got selected for the GB Elite squad. And the boys, when they came back from Rio, they finished 4th, I think, or 5th. Now, UK Sport are the governing body who control all the finances now for each governing body's sport. And they turned around seeing that GB Wheelchair Rugby had finished 4th or 5th, and we got this tag of being like the nearly men or the has-beens, whatever, and they deemed that we weren't worthy enough of any funding for the Rio 2016 to the 2020 Tokyo Paralympics, that cycle. So we weren't worthy of any funding. So I just made the decision to leave the military, and this is now going to be my new career path and where I'm going to take forward. And obviously a bit of a shock to the system to decide that there's no funding in place. And was there even going to be a national team? Was there even going to be a national program that I could take part in? And it was a little bit up in the air, but we were given the kind of positive news that there was definitely going to be a program and they'd make it work somehow. And we kind of muddled our way through. We had a few corporate sponsors on side, and the way that they helped us was massive. And we still went out to tournaments, so we still managed to win things. And again, it was something that I enjoyed doing so much, because again, you're going away places and you're making the most of it, but you're now playing a sport at the highest level that you can think of. And I think in 2019 we went to Denmark for a tournament, and the carrot on the stick was that if you came top 2 in that tournament, that you got qualification for the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic Games. We won the tournament, which was great. We won it. We managed to qualify for the games, and an amazing feeling. But the thing in the back of my mind was, yeah, we've qualified, but that doesn't automatically mean that you as an individual athlete are going to be selected to go. So next slide, please. Yeah, obviously I was all geared up, looking forward to Tokyo and whether or not I'd be selected and stuff like that. And I remember obviously in the early part of 2000 that obviously with the pandemic hitting us, it was a massive blow. But I was more concerned that the games were not going to go ahead at all, let alone anything else. And we were given the fortunate news that the games weren't going to be cancelled, just postponed by 12 months. And a lot of people saw this as like obviously a bit negative, but for me, I kind of found it as a great way of looking at things from a different perspective. And it gave us another 12 months to train. It gave us another 12 months to improve. And I know that not only we were a disability sport, we're a team sport that you have to play indoors. And obviously with the current restrictions, with the restrictions that were ongoing at the time with the coronavirus and stuff like that, it was tough, really tough. And again, it was about finding different ways that you can now operate around things. And for me, obviously I converted the garage downstairs into a gym. I got all more stuff in there so that I could work out at home and I could get myself in the best shape possible. We held like regular Zoom sessions where we looked at our own technical stuff, our own tactical stuff, how we can work on our mental prep and our mental game, stuff like that. And for me, it was just hours upon hours. I've been on the skier, on the rowing machine, on the handbike turbo training in the garage, and just watching opposition footage. And I think I kind of exhausted every single little bit of footage that there is on YouTube to try and get through to just to put us in the best frame of mind. And fortunately enough, I got the call that I was being selected to go to Tokyo when the games finally came around in obviously last year. We went out there, and obviously a little bit different to what Rio with the crowds and stuff, but for us it was all about going out there and winning the medal. And we were in the best shape possible. We were in a kind of way unknown about how the other nations were preparing, because obviously nobody saw anything because of the pandemic, etc. And you weren't had the opportunity to play against teams and stuff like that. But we felt confident. I remember the first game that we played was against Canada. And Canada were the actual team that knocked us out of the medal contention match in Rio. So a massive game that we knew it was going to make or break from the start. And fortunately enough, we played that game. We smashed the Canadians, and we were on the road then to a few more victories. We remember we played the USA in the final pool game. Unfortunately, we lost that game, but we were still going into the semi-final. But now this meant that we had a semi-final up against the host nation, Japan, who were, I think at the time, ranked second in the world, whereas we ranked fourth. So we knew it was going to be a tough game. But we looked back at the video footage and how we can improve and how we can make things better. And we went out there, we applied the game plan, and we managed to beat them, and we were through to the gold medal match. And I remember sitting on the bus on the way to the gold medal match where we were going to play again the USA. And one of my teammates turned around to me and said, look, this could be, he couldn't believe it that we were going to come away with a silver medal. And I said, well, we shouldn't be thinking like that. We should be looking at trying to win this, and this could be the only opportunity we ever get to win a gold medal. So that mindset straight away, I think, was the same for the rest of the team. We went out there. It was a very tough game. I remember in the third quarter, I'd been on and off because you can have rolling substitutions in rugby. I came on in the third quarter, and it was our possession. We were already a goal up, but it's our possession. And I remember the coach saying to me, this is this is our time. We need to score this goal. That'll give us a 2-goal lead, and hopefully that'll help us kick on to win. I said, that's fine, don't worry, just give me the ball, I will score. I remember receiving the ball, and literally out of nowhere, this American guy hit me, and I ended up on the floor, and it was a turnover of possession, so it basically became the Americans' ball, and it was a tough one to take because I've done a lot of work on my mental game and how I can pick myself back up, and I didn't have time to go through all these different techniques of what we'd been learning and have to go from an irrational mind to a more rational thinking kind of things. And I literally had to pick myself up and say, right, look, this is a gold medal match. We have to get back on track and we have to win this. I remember the Americans getting the ball. I hit this guy. He fell on the floor, and then the guy it then became our possession. We scored from it, and it kind of snowballed from there. We kind of went a few more goals up. And again, a bit like the first ever Invictus games, that I was waiting for this buzzer to go to say the end of the match. And when it finally went and we'd won the gold medal, again, instead of me not being able to move, I just let out the biggest shout, the biggest yell, the biggest whatever that I could think of, and we'd done it. And not only had I come from where I'd been injured 7 or 8 years earlier, but this is like for GB, for everyone that had doubted us back in the UK that we were always going to be the has-been and they're never going to win a medal. And here we are, coming out in front of our rest of our team and everybody back home watching, and coming away with the gold medal. So it's an unbelievable achievement, and one that I don't think I'll ever really be able to top because of the circumstances and the events that we were in, despite the pandemic as well. So it was an amazing achievement, and obviously we kind of look forward now to the rest of the next Paralympic cycle, and it's going to be tough to try and top that, but I think that it's definitely one to look forward to and to aim towards. Next slide, please. I think it's one of the last ones. I remember I put this one up at the start, and basically it's just something that kind of I kind of go through. That obviously there's been a lot of tough things that have happened, not just the incident that we talked about, obviously being injured and stuff like that, but with the funding loss and with the pandemic and how we can get things back on track. But for me, I just kind of like to take on board every single day as a new day, and where it can take me and how I can now push my life forward every single opportunity that I get. And this is not just in the rugby life, this is at home with the family, this is out and about with friends, this could be anything really. And it's just something that, like I said, something that I live by and how I kind of try and live my life. Hopefully you guys have managed to take something on board from me waffling on for the last however long. I think the next slide is just if there's any questions. I'm pretty sure that Chris has got the opportunity to try and get through some, so yeah.
Well, cheers, Stuart. Firstly, obviously, thank you very much for telling us your experience. I've got a couple of questions now. The first one is obviously the mindset side. You've been through an extreme adverse situation. What mindsets do you now set yourself on a daily basis when potentially you do have those low moments, which are only natural? How do you then pick yourself up and push forward?
It's a pretty simple one, to be honest. I know this is probably going to be a more male-orientated thing, but a lot of males are quite reserved and don't generally like to ask for help. But for me, I've had to learn that since injury and since everything else that's gone on, that often sometimes that the way to get around things or the way to look at things is to approach things from different angles and different perspectives, and not to be afraid to ask for help. And if that's friends and family, if that's people nearby, if that's anybody really that you think that they've got a better opportunity, a better idea of how to help you, then surely that's going to be a good thing rather than trying to sit and struggle with things on your own. Yeah,
no, completely agree. Got another question for you now then. So apart from having to learn how to walk again, how did you deal with the mental health aspects? What were the stumbling blocks and how did you get over them?
So I think one of the positive things to come out of the incident was the fact that I remember none of it. I remember being injured. I remember being in Afghanistan at some point and then waking up in Birmingham, but there's literally nothing in between. And even to this day, I'll try and think of certain things in Afghanistan to try and jog my memory to what had happened, and nothing will come back. Now, that's a pretty positive mental thing for me, because it just means that you learn to walk again, you learn to get on with life, and you learn to try and get on with things. And it's a pretty good thing to do. Now, I know that the other two guys that were in the vehicle with me, they suffered relatively minor injuries, should we say, physical injuries, that they suffered a loss of their front tooth, and I think the driver, he had a twisted ankle, whatever. Now, for them to have relatively minor physical injuries is good for them. They can get on with life as normal, but for them, they were awake for the whole thing. They have to live every single day with the thought of the incident. And I know that the young guy in the back, he suffers pretty badly with his post-traumatic stress disorder and things like that. So for me, it's a pretty easy transition to make, but for these guys, it's probably a little bit more difficult to learn to get on with it day by day.
Oh, thank you. Also, I am slightly conscious of the time. We've got sort of about 4 minutes left. I just want to say thank you, really. That was the last time that I saw you in person was in Selly Oak, just after the incident, because we'd just taken over from you on tour. But thank you very much for coming today, talking about about your exposure and, to be honest, your overall success going forward, and now achieving an MBE and becoming an Olympic athlete. On a personal note, I couldn't be more proud. So yeah, thank you very much. That there aren't any further questions. I hope not. Anyway, no, there aren't. So thank you everyone for tuning in today for this webinar. It's greatly appreciated. It is my first one. So yeah, it means a lot for the amount of people that have tuned in. Other than that, please have a good day, stay safe, and hopefully you've taken something away from today's webinar. Thank you.